on the markets. I'm Joe Matthew. Good Monday to you. Thanks for starting your week here on Bloomberg Radio, satellite radio channel 121. You can watch the radio on TV as ever. Go to YouTube and search Bloomberg Business News Live. You can also catch the program on Bloomberg Originals. We're 3 weeks out. If you're keeping score on your home game, there is still no deal to fund the government beyond the 30th of September. Yeah, it's the 8th now, and we have fewer than a dozen legislative days to get this done. This is the conversation we were having going into the weekend, and we're still having it now as lawmakers get back to town. Nathan Dean talked to us last week about this and introduced a really interesting prospect that's now being fleshed out in stories around Washington, D.C. Democrats say they don't trust Republicans, right? Not only did you have the president's big, beautiful bill that they say cut Medicaid, I should say, then there was the rescissions package, followed by a pocket rescission. And Democrats pulled away from the table and said, okay, we're done. Can't trust Republicans when they're clawing back money that's already been passed and appropriated, just not spent. The idea would be, well, boy, so you shut down the government. Republicans could have a real problem politically coming into this fall season. But the White House says, oh, yeah, maybe we do want to shut things down. And that's what I want to talk to Nathan about here, who incidentally just got off, very importantly, the Bloomberg Intelligence Financial Washington Policy Weekly Call, which until now was probably off limits to you. Nathan starts the week Monday morning with this call. All the terminal subscribers who want to be there from all around the world get involved. Well, we've decided to do something pretty cool. And Nathan is with me right here, and he's got the fleece vest. Senior U.S. policy analyst Nathan Dean, great to see you. So here's what we did. We turned your call into a podcast, which is now on the podcast feed of Balance of Power. So every Monday before this show drops, you get this guy, Nathan Dean, to set the table for policy that'll run you through the week. This is like the coolest thing we have going. So thank you for playing ball. And we're like on the same show now. We're team members.
Absolutely. No, thanks for having it. And, you know, one of the best things about the call that we try and advise our clients, and look, if you want to listen to it, go to the podcast and you'll hear it, is we try and advise the clients how to deal with the red lines that are coming from the terminal, meaning the headlines, because there's a lot of noise in Washington. But when you get down to the process of how Washington works, whether it's executive orders, legislation, regulation, committee hearings, you can sort of figure out what the process drives you to these ultimate end games, if you will. And so if you're an investor in Visa, MasterCard, Bank of America, JP Morgan, whoever, you know, this is the call that we decide to help you figure out how does Washington impact your portfolio.
Amazing. This is super cool. And it's frankly why we've been dragging you on the air for this whole time, is to answer some of these questions. So it's just a little more, Nathan, a little deeper, and a sense of what people are asking, which I'm always curious about, which is, you know, what we always talk about. What are people hitting you on today? Nathan, what are they calling you about? And right now it might be a government shutdown, but I'll let everyone know. I wasn't eavesdropping on purpose. I overheard a conversation that you were having with a client, and you were going out of your way to say, I want you to know, from the investor's standpoint, this is not a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the government shut down, and apologize to, if you're listening to us in D.C. right now and you're a government worker or a contractor, because obviously you don't get paid during government shutdowns. But from the market perspective, whether it's a S&P or whether it's even a government contractor, if you're looking at individual equities, there really is minimal impact here. During the 31-day shutdown that happened under Trump's first administration, S&P went down just a little bit, but then by the end was up like 10%. Okay. And even these large contractors, they're working off of contracts that are usually 2-3 years in length. The one thing that we would advise clients is, if you are a trader in commodities, for example, or if you're looking at just Fed data tends to slow down in government shutdowns. Okay. And so whether it's a commitment of traders report from the CFTC or a USDA report or something coming from the BLS, that's where you're going to have to be a little bit careful. But, you know, for the most part, it's really those of us who want to take our kids to the zoo. That's what we pay attention to.
I got you. And now you're still at 40%, if I remember from last week, 40% odds on a shutdown.
Yes.
The idea that the White House might prefer a shutdown, I'm guessing, would change the way you're answering some of these calls, because there is a thought, and we talked about this last week, Patrick McHenry talked about it at this table. So did Mick Mulvaney. Say, hey, you know what? Russ Vought's got a plan. There's a folder somewhere in his desk that says shut down, party time on the front of it, because the idea is you shut down the government, then the White House can start doing what it wants when it comes to doling out money. And maybe the White House would just let it stay closed all year. And that's sort of the ultimate Doge event if that happens, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you interviewed former Director Mulvaney, he said he was, and I'm paraphrasing here, he was giddy that he
jealous
wanted,
was the word he used.
Exactly. He wanted to be Russ Vought because look, who is the person that decides who's an essential employee or a non-essential employee?
Right.
It's the OMB. And if I'm Russ Vought and we get into a shutdown situation, Congress is irrelevant. I'm now the person that's driving here. And so if I'm the Democrats, that may not be something that I want to give up right now, because this is what we're telling our clients is that, look, we still have a year and a few months until the midterms. It's not like many people are going to be walking into the voting booth in November 2026 and say, hey, I remember what happened on September 30th, 2025, because the government shut down for 2 days. I'm not going to vote off of that. So I need to see strategies from the parties going into September 30th that if you want to shut the government down, what's the strategy and what's the end game here? Because the end game is, I'm not exactly sure what it is.
Right.
And so if the Democrats get into a situation where there is a government shutdown, and, you know, Matthew Iglesias wrote this on Bloomberg Opinion that maybe healthcare is the reason why you want to do it. What's the end game? But ultimately, I think the OMB here is going to do a lot of things the Democrats don't like.
Because there might not be an end game for lawmakers, which is when the White House takes the ball and holds on to it. So in a world like that, let's say this is an extreme, by the way. A lot of people don't think the government's going to shut down at all. But in a world like that, you get 3 to 6 months in a shutdown, the White House is closing agencies or moving people around. That becomes an investor problem. That's a market story, is it not?
Yeah, and I don't think we would ever get into a situation like that, because if you remember, shutdowns are not popular with the American populace, and it's the person who always is seen causing the shutdown is the one that pays the political price. And so, when you hear that, Russ Vought may want a shutdown, you're also hearing language from the White House saying, look, we want a 1-year CR.
That's correct.
Well, why do we want a 1-year CR? Because then we don't have to deal with shutdown fights in an election year. And if you go back to that 31-day shutdown, remember, there were a lot of World War II vets who showed up at the memorial and they pushed those gates down, and everybody supported that. And so with the American populace not supporting the idea of shutdowns, that's why I think they'll ultimately kick the can. And if we do have a shutdown, say in December or early next year, I think it'd be short term.
What are the chances of a full year CR? Because there are a lot of Republicans who have an allergy to this idea. Pentagon hawks freak out and say that's a cut to defense spending. Is that how we should look at it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you have the military folks who are saying, look, let's not do this. You have the folks who say, I'm not going to support a CR. But also remember, if I'm a Democrat, I may not want to give a 1-year CR because these are good opportunities to score political points if you're in the minority.
Yeah.
And so if you're, for example, one of the things that our clients have been asking is, what is the one piece of legislation that could be attached to this as a way to get to the president's desk? And my answer to that is the Credit Card Competition Act that would increase competition for Visa and MasterCard. Senator Marshall tried to attach it to the stablecoin bill to advance it to the president's desk. And every time you get about 3-4 weeks before this government shutdown, that's when you should start be thinking, what is the bill that gets attached? And for what it's worth, I don't think it's going to pass, but that's the one that I'm thinking of.
Just a minute left. NDAA. This is the one said to be bipartisan, passes every year. Flies above controversy. Will this year be any different?
I think it may be a little bit different. I think ultimately it still passes on a bipartisan nature, but there could be some fireworks that I think this ultimately...
This is the National Defense Authorization Act. What could be attached to it that would be controversial?
Well,
Is that it?
That Visa...
So this is the vehicle?
It could be. Okay. I mean, look, it doesn't have to be. I mean, you know how Washington works. It can be something completely irrelevant.
Yeah, right. Wow. All right. So subscribe to the Balance of Power podcast. You get the Nathan Dean podcast, the weekly Washington policy call, right? So this is every Monday morning.
Yep.
It's on your podcast feed now. You already dropped the show?
Already dropped
15 minutes of intelligence, Bloomberg intelligence by way of Nathan Dean. He's America's dad, and he wears the most famous fleece vest in the country. It's great to have you as always. We're going to do this every